Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is a pleasure to be with you this evening. And a big thank you to the students who have organized this event. It's really quite an event, and I'm so delighted to be part of it. So thank you. There are three things I would like to talk to you about tonight. The first one is HIV/AIDS. The second one is how one person can make a difference. And the third one is about Generation Z. A few years ago, I had the opportunity to travel to Africa with 41 other grandmothers from across Canada. And we went to Swaziland, where we met 500 African grandmothers from 13 different countries. And as with most conferences, we had a day of workshops, and one of the workshops I attended was given by a young woman, 19 years old, from Namibia, whose name was Tate. And when Tate finished her presentation, I went over to speak to her grandmothers. And in the course of the conversation, I asked the grandmothers to tell me a little bit about the rest of their family. Well, one of the grandmothers dissolved into tears, and the other grandmother took my hand and led me away, and she explained to me that the first grandmother had lost her daughter to AIDS 3 days prior. Well, you can imagine. I had no words. I didn't know what to say. So I did the only thing I knew how. I went over and I hugged her and I shared her grief. These grandmothers are so strong and so resilient. I am a mother of 3, and I can't imagine how devastating it would be to lose a child. But these grandmothers bury their own children. Then they take care of their grandchildren, and they take care of each other. The AIDS pandemic has raged on for over 30 years, and there's many who think that it's under control, that it's fine, that it's not a problem anymore. But I can tell you that there are thousands who are dying every day because of the AIDS pandemic. Since the beginning in the 80s, there have been 39 million people worldwide who have died of AIDS. Right now, today, there are 35 million people living with AIDS, and 70% of those are in sub-Saharan Africa. It isn't and hasn't gone away. But it's not all bad news. There have been some wonderful people who have worked tirelessly to change things. One of those people is Stephen Lewis. Stephen Lewis was Canada's ambassador to United Nations back in the 90s, and from there he was appointed Special Envoy to Africa for HIV/AIDS. And as Mr. Lewis traveled in Africa, he saw the humanitarian crisis unfolding in front of his eyes. Thousands of orphans and grandmothers struggling to take care of them with little or no assistance. He just had to do something. So one night, back in Toronto, around his kitchen table, with his daughter, Alana Landsberg Lewis, they started the Stephen Lewis Foundation. And their goal was simple: just try to ease the pain. As they continued to travel in Africa, they saw that it was the grandmothers who were holding their villages and their communities together. So they thought, wonder what would happen if I brought Canadian grandmothers and African grandmothers together. So in 2006, that's exactly what they did. They brought over 100 African grandmothers to meet with 200 Canadian grandmothers in Toronto, and over 3 days, they told stories and they listened to one another. The outcome of that was the foundation of the Grandmothers to Grandmothers campaign. At that time, at that gathering, Canadian grandmothers promised the African grandmothers, "We will not rest until you can rest." And I'm happy to tell you they've kept their promise. There are now 240 groups across our big country. There are about 10,000 grandmothers who are involved in raising awareness and raising funds and working in solidarity with the African grandmothers. It's been really a rewarding journey working with these grandmothers. I have a question for you now, and my question is this. If you were standing on a sidewalk and the person beside you was about to step out in front of a bus, perhaps because they're from England or Australia where the traffic flows the other way, would you not reach out and pull them back? Of course you would. It's just human instinct. You wouldn't want somebody to die in front of you if you could prevent their death. So my second question is, why is it different if that person is in another country and you could do something to prevent their death? So this is where Generation Z comes in. Generation Z are most of the young people in front of me. If you were born between 1995 and 2009, you are called Generation Z. And they have different names for you. They call you the IGers. They call you the Millennials. They call you, oh, I like this one, the Screen-agers. I simply call you the IGers. And you are all your formative years have been in this century. You are the first truly global generation. Your life is an open book. You are connected to your peers 24/7, and your thinking is largely shaped by your peers. Chances are many tonight are sleep deprived because they've been on their devices in the wee hours of the morning. You're changing the teaching profession. Because knowledge is at your fingertips, teachers are no longer the disseminators of information. Teachers and professors have become facilitators of the learning process. Gen Zers, your life is morphed into one huge mosaic. Your work life, your school life, your social life, entertainment is all intertwined. Some might think that you're just playing on your devices, but that would be an incorrect assumption. In your short lives, you have seen worldwide changes, and you've probably seen some changes at home, maybe on the job front. Maybe somebody has lost their job, if not in your immediate family, perhaps in one of your friends. This has caused you to be serious, and you have high EI, emotional intelligence. You are in tune with the world, and you care about the world. Jobs you will hold in the future don't exist today. You will create them. And you can probably think of some people who have already done so. Gen Zers are carving and making a difference. Think of Adora on your screen. Adora is an international speaker and an author, well known already. Think of Malala, the gutsy young woman who dared to stand up and speak for education for girls. And then there's Lydia in Vancouver, a young woman who has started a Granddaughters to Grandmothers campaign. So with all your technological ability, your cultural awareness, and your big hearts, I believe that this generation, you, are well poised to work with the grandmothers and other generations, that you will work with Gen Zers in Africa or other countries, and that you will turn the tide on AIDS. I do not believe that you will allow thousands to continue to step in front of the bus. Now we're going to hear a little song that the Canadian grandmothers sang at the gathering that I spoke of early in Africa. And you will hear the African grandmothers join in the Canadian grandmothers. Thank you.